Good morning and welcome to In Search of Prosperity Sisterhood. I am so glad you ladies are here this morning, whether it's here live or on our replay. As things come up for you, say something, raise your hand, do your thing, drop that comment, shoot that email, whatever it might be, whatever connects to your heart, act on it, right? We talk about that a lot in this sisterhood. So with that, we're going to start today with the word connection, which is not unfamiliar for us in our group. And then also relatability and how we can kind of bridge gaps in our communication and in our relationships. And this idea of a triangle and wanting to close that loop. As a connection queen, and I want all you ladies to be connection queens as well, but closing that loop, being that third piece, being that link that puts those two things together. It really only requires creativity and openness, value seeking, value giving, right? Like that give and take. Maybe it's more of a reciprocation, value reciprocation. And then just being intentional about making connection. So connection, on my notes, I have an actual triangle drawn in a few places, just as that image trigger for me. But in connection, we instantly think of commonalities, right? So you and me plus this thing that we have in common, or this person, or this idea, or this experience, or this hobby, interest, whatever it might be, right? So commonalities are a form of connection. Those are kind of the easy ones, right? It's what you're wearing on your shirt, right? It's it can be anything. I just thought of like, it's the style of glasses, it's a hairstyle, it's a dress with pockets. Like commonalities can be so simple and fun. Yes, they require creativity and openness and that value reciprocation and acting, reaching out, saying, hey, I like your dress, right? Like it's my favorite color. Hey, we have something in common. What do you know, right? But then when we look at it from the relatability spectrum, that's where the creativity and openness and value reciprocation really come in handy and make you stand out. Also, while making them part of it, the other piece, if we're talking about connection with other people, right? So you have this was part of this, especially the relatability was triggered from last week. We had ended up in our live discussion. What do I want to call it? Our implementation session. That took me a long time to say. On Thursday, we ended up having kind of a hot seat coaching situation where I was asked, okay, this is the speech that I'm writing and I'm missing a piece. Like, where is that? Like, how do I connect these two things, right? And it was two concepts. And I want you to know that you can be the unique connector of those two concepts. Because the other person in the situation, or in this case, it was an audience, right? You have an audience that sees these two concepts and they're like, but who are you? Right? Like I understand or know or am familiar with, I relate to these two concepts, but how do I relate to you, the speaker? And that's something where you have the opportunity and the confidence to know you are the connection queen in that situation. You are connecting those two dots for that audience, for those people, for that conversation. And your unique experiences can connect two concepts for someone else. They're like, that light bulb can go off. And yet you're not making it about yourself. You're making it about that experience that allows you to connect those two things so that maybe they can connect those two things. That was kind of that conversation, hot seat coaching that we experienced on Thursday. But as you connect, it always ends in growth. Oh no, I've got someone in the waiting room. Got it. Okay. So as you connect, it always ends in growth. And that's that end result of that triangle. It's how do we shift that to the positive? How do we gain something from this? How does this triangle stand on its own to create a foundation, right? So as I mentioned, as you're creating connection and as you're creating that relatability, you have that opportunity to close loops, to turn on the light bulb for someone or something. And it can always, 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 you can try and change my mind, but it can always be finished. I keep doing this like this triangle, okay? The third point can always be gratitude, celebration, or appreciation. And we put those three things in other places within our sisterhood, in our conversations. But when we're talking about connection and relatability, sometimes you've got a mind block or a physical block that's keeping you from making that connection. And so when we meet that with gratitude or celebration or appreciation, it closes that loop. Those things can be that third point that finish that connection triangle, that then it can be built upon. Because if you just have those two pieces, those two concepts, those two ideas, those two people, if you just have those two, it becomes just a line. And lines are really hard to build something on, right? But when you add that third piece, through that creativity, the openness, value reciprocation, and intentionality, when you close that loop, when you create that triangle, now you have an actual form to build on. So in our life, we have, I don't know, examples of this. You need a third thing. We've talked about threes in other forms in this group, actually just recently. But one example I wrote down because I really want to get in my garden, if I'm being honest. One example is you can have soil and seeds, but you also need water. And if we approach our relationships in that way, if we approach our connections and our relatability, like, what does this need? Time and distance don't matter, only your heart. So sometimes when we think of two people and like they should connect, but it's really far-fetched, right? Or it's been a long time since you reached out to somebody or had been in contact or related to them in any way. They kind of fell off your list in whatever way. I don't know, things happen, life changes. You experience different things and they experience different things if it's people we're talking about, right? So yet your heart is really the only thing that matters in that situation because your heart pinged and said, these two things need to be connected, these two people, these two concepts, these two whatever. Just turn it into a triangle. Like, admit it, say it out loud, do the thing, make the connection, act on it, And then time and distance don't matter. I wrote a little quip. There's a quote: "Time flies when you're having fun." Time flies whether you're having fun or not. And so connection and finding connection can slow down time, can create gratitude and appreciation and celebration in your life. And it allows you and the others involved to savor that relationship, to sit in that thought that you connected for them, or to sit in that appreciation of the connection that you created for them. And also know and don't take the back seat in some way in these connections, because you can be a part of all the connections in your world, and you can see it and hear it and act on it and share that connection. So connection doesn't have to be outside of you. If you've connected two things and you're like, oh, that makes sense, share it, see it, draw it all out. Some of that creativity and openness is something we need with ourselves too. So as we share the connections that we've made, repeat that concept that we've connected in our head, we're helping other people grow. Because, like I said, connection always ends in growth. So, as you go out and connect others and connect yourself to whatever it is you're thinking about, being that relatable piece of that puzzle, it's always going to end in growth. In what direction? Sometimes you may never know, but it's always going to end in growth. Now, I know going into our live discussion, we're going to add to that. We're going to say, oh, but what about this? Doesn't it also add this? I've always found it does this. And I'm curious, as we go into this live discussion, what has connection created for you? Maybe the visualization of this triangle. What loops have you closed? So I'm ready to go into that live discussion and hash that out with these ladies. So with that, we're going to go in. And if you're on here on the replay and want to jump in on our next session, hash this out deeper, that's what we're here for. That positive peer pressure is alive and well, especially in our Thursday morning sessions. So with that, feel invited, be there in any way you can. And I will see you next time.